Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Open Mic, Writers in Their Own Words, where every show I talk to writers from across the literary spectrum about their work and how they do what they do. Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to have New York Times bestsellers. Other times might be folks just getting their work out there. But either way, everyone that comes on this show is here to talk about writing, publishing, editing, whatever it is. If you don't know, the show's available on both YouTube and on pretty much every major podcast platform. You could do me a solid and subscribe to both, either, preferably both. And if you do, please leave a review. It's really helpful for folks, other folks, to find the series later on, find the show. And I think they're going to want to do that, because if you have any interest today in writing, folks like my guest today, you definitely want to hear what they have to say about it. He's a great guy. He's an old friend of the show. Much more than that, the reason he's here is that he's a highly acclaimed fiction author. He's the man behind the J. Porter series. I think 8 standalone novels now, which I think I'll confirm with him in just a moment. His latest is Say My Name, which comes out on June 6th. I am, of course, talking about Joe Clifford. Joe, welcome back to the Open Mic. It is great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back. It's a lovely day in sunny California, so not much to complain about there. And yeah, always happy to talk to you.
Great. Well, let's get started. I noted the book. I love that it's billed as a true crime story about a crime that never happened, or did it? That's a good tagline. I really like that. Tell me a bit about the new book that's coming out here in a couple of weeks.
Sure. Yeah. This like some of the best art, I'd like to believe. This was born from a mistake, a misunderstanding. I was reading Jess Laurie's Unspeakable Things, and in her foreword, she talks about some true crimes, that inspired the novel. I mistook that to be that she was writing about the true crime itself, about, she was going to be a character in the story. I later realized that she was just talking about the inspiration that, was a genesis for her novel. But from that, I got the idea of, what if you had a mystery writer who had been drawn to this line of work, and they go back to their hometown, and maybe there's a case there, a disappearance that weighed so heavily on their psyche. It's what propelled them to become a mystery writer in the first place. So using that as a premise, I have I got the idea for a true crime story about missing twins from my hometown, and I, in quotes there, go back to teach at my old college. The job falls through, but through a series of unfortunate events, or however we get our novel started, I am again brought back to that initial disappearance that inspired my desire to write crime. And the fun part about that is I got to use all real names. I got to use the real names of people I know, with their permission, of course. There were a few people who were like, "That's a little creepy. I don't want to be involved in that." But most everybody wanted to see their name in print, which is great. And it takes place in my hometown of Berlin, Connecticut, spelled like the one in Germany, but do not pronounce it like the one in Germany, or people get very upset. It was a very big source of contention growing up. It was not Berlin, it was Berlin, like pearl in a preposition. So yeah, it was, it's when you get rid of that line between fact and fiction, it allows you to do things as a writer, a closeness that you're not afforded otherwise. So writing I is, as we know, you can write I as a character, first person. You can be as removed from that I as you want. This put me very close to the I, which was fun, because of course it's not you, but it is you. And discussing a crime, a true crime, the may or may not have happened, also allows you to blur those, what's fact and what's fiction, and what's reality, what's perception, and get into that fun Twilight Zone sort of motif. And
Well, let me be straight. Did a crime happen or did not happen? A real one?
Did the crime happen? No. I
Okay.
mean, it did not happen. The crime did not happen in the sense that no twins went disappearing from my hometown.
Okay.
But the novel is written, like Capote writing in Cold Blood,
Right.
as though it did happen.
Okay.
So, yeah, which is why a true crime novel, those two things can't go together really. A novel, of course, is fiction, and true crime is not. So, but it's written
Well,
along that very thin line.
it sounds fascinating. And true crime is such a big deal these days, of course. Uh, could you ever see yourself actually writing a true crime novel, or a true crime, not a novel, but a true crime, writing a book about a true crime?
I could see myself writing anything that would pay me. I mean, I like playing with tropes, and I like playing with expectation, and I like playing, metafiction, uh, all that. I find that's where your area, what interests you is where you're going to do your best work, right? And so yeah, true crime. I'm like everybody else, get sucked into the podcasts, and I've watched I grew up on unsolved mysteries, and there is a line that blurs in where you cross from one into the other, and people have always argued that In Cold Blood is actually more of a novel than it is a true crime, because he takes so many liberties. So it's where along that it's not as black and white as we like to think. Obviously, a crime either happens or it doesn't. But how many mysteries are based on real events? I mean, often, almost all of my novels, are inspired by real events. How everything that's a joke, right? It's all inspired by life. Of course, it's inspired by life. The Jay Porter series is based on the Manafort brothers. Paul Manafort, who everybody knows about, who was the guy that killed my dad. That's a true story. I changed the names to the Lombardis, but it's the Manaforts. I'm in the process of working on a novel now where I'm, again playing with that idea. Because what can you say, and what's slander, and what's and that's that whole fascinating thing. But I've always thought that if you're gonna, the best thing to happen to a writer is to get sued for slander. It's for free publicity. I'll take it. If the Manaforts want to come after me, by all means, because what they did was true.
For anybody who is not familiar with that story, I will put a link to our previous conversation that we had before, because Joe and I talked about that at length, and I'll put a link in the show notes so you can go back and watch that one too and get some insight into what he's talking about. And it is that Manafort. Yeah. The Paul Manafort is the same Paul Manafort. So, and if you think he was a pile of monkey shit, he is.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. He's just a real piece of shit. Whole family, just a bunch of jackasses.
We don't pull punches here on the open mic. We're just gonna say it out how it is. That's for damn sure here.
I think anybody who looked at that guy could take, I mean, you can't judge a book by its cover, but you look at that guy right away and you just say douchebag. I mean, he just looks. He really does.
Yeah, I think he wore it as a badge of honor. That seems to be. Well, so we know you're a great crime fiction writer. What's interesting to me is your last few books, or some of your books anyway, have focused on psychological suspense, which is an offshoot of straight crime fiction. Tell me a little bit about that. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at somebody, if I had a manager, they'd probably be mad at me. I don't think my career has gone in a trajectory that would have been prudent. I don't have much business acumen. My marketing skills are lax. I have a wife who is, who's got a master's in business, and she's forever telling me how stupid my decisions are. And I had a nice little thing going with crime, but I found myself a little more interested in that domestic psychological suspense, namely domestic psychological suspense written by women authors. And I became huge fanboys of Mary Kubica and Gillian Flynn and Paula Hawkins and Wendy Walker and Jennifer Hillier and all these. I just found they were doing something that men weren't, and I got really tired of the tough guy, cars and racing and high speed chases, and I just got tired of it. I don't know, and I'm glad that it just wasn't for me. I found more, I don't know, just area, more of an area of interest in that sense, suspense and domestics. I'm a married dad with two kids. I live in suburbia. I golf. How much more crime do I, that's, I don't know. I kind of got tired of it, so I switched a little bit, and it probably did ruin some momentum because the readers who liked what I was doing, they liked the crime and but if you're not keeping if you're not interesting, if you're not writing something that you find interesting, if you're not interested in the subject matter yourself, like how can you convey that to your audience? And I felt it was a little disingenuous to, to keep writing, these, same kind of crime book. And I don't want to write the same book. I mean, I want to write something new and something different and something challenging. And I have an editor I work with, Chris Radigan, who's a fantastic editor, but he paid me one of the highest compliments, and he's like, somehow you do something different every book. Every book is something different. There's so many authors who write one book and just write that same book again and again and again and again. And I would rather, that to me, that's why I don't work a 9-to-5 job in a factory. I don't want to do the same thing. I want to constantly push and constantly challenge and raise bars and raise expectations and subvert expectations and do, pull the rug out. I don't want to be a formulaic artist. And
let me ask you, Joe, let me ask you something here, because, and I'm going to make a lot of people mad at me in my age group, and I'm sorry, but I call that the journification of writing. That was Journey. Journey back in the 70s and 80s wrote the same damn song over and over and over again, and they got all kinds of airplay, and they made lots and lots of money, and that's what every band that came after them did. And I see the same thing in novels like you're talking about. And then I'll hear agents, or you read like what agents want, and it's the same old BS about, I want something different. I want this. I want this to this. And no, they do not. I really wish they would just be honest one time and say, I want you to write something just like Gillian Flynn. I want you to write something just, I want you to write the next Da Vinci Code. I want it to be exactly like that, so we can have the big blockbuster and the movie tie-in and all the other stuff, because that makes me the most money. And I don't want your original thing. I don't want my readers to have to think about it, because it's too hard for me to sell.
It's a lot like it's a lot like dating, and it's this idea that nobody wants to be set up on a blind date, right? Everybody wants that, that person coming off the street and love at first sight. But the truth is, like, they're so adverse to meeting new people because so many new people suck. So the agents have the same problem, right? They get the same, like, they want to be wild. They want something that they didn't expect. But at the same time, you think about what agents get. They just the endless piles of shit they have to read through. And I really feel for them, because of course they want to be wild, and they want something new, and they want something irreverent. They want something, geez, man, I've never seen this before. And but here's another story about a serial killer. So yeah, it's a strange thing where you want something new but different. You want something familiar but avant-garde. And so they want to be wild, but yet they're risk adverse. They want to be, that's the thing that always gets me about agents is they want the next new big thing, but they're really risk adverse. And then when they find something that works, yeah, they milk the hell out of it because it works. But in agents' defense, they get what, 15% of. I mean, I know what I make, and it ain't a whole hell of a lot. So my poor agent, 15% of what I make, that's not buying anybody a new car. It's not buying anybody a new, not buying anybody a new door on a car. So it's it when you see it, and you just hope to catch lightning in a bottle and 16 other axioms and adages and cliches you can throw in there as well. It's tough because it's as a business, everybody wants to be a writer, and how many people are reading? Not nearly enough people read compared
Right.
to the number of people that want to be writers, which is strange. I mean, I read, you read, but that you see those stats. I think something like one out of four read a book after high school.
Yeah, it's disheartening to say the least, right?
Yeah. So it's I just did it. I did a Zoom in on a class back east to Red Lamentation, which is set in New England, and I zoomed into a class, and one of the students was like, "Was there what advice do you have for somebody who wants to be a writer?" And I always give the same answer, and it's don't. Don't. My advice to you is don't do something else, do anything else, and if I can't talk you out of it at that point, okay, then here's what you need to do. But my first bit of advice is always find a job that pays. And being a writer is it's kind of like I mean, not to compare it to like war, people who work in coal mines or some shit like that, but I mean, it's a pretty good gig. But it's also, if you have a choice between being a writer and or I could go into finance,
Well, you will have more job security, that's for sure. I saw this big Twitter argument the other day, which I'd normally ignore, but it was essentially an agent venting about writers venting at her, and I get it, but it caught my attention because basically, and I'm not going to say the agent or the agency, but essentially what she said was, well, writers write because it's a passion, but agents, we need, that passion doesn't put food on our table. And of course everybody lost their shit because it's like, what, you think we write only for passion? You think people do this, write these words that we don't care about getting paid? What planet are you living on, man? And so and then because she had to add to the snark by saying, well, I'd make 120 grand a year if I just use my marketing masters. Well, then by all means go do that, because it sounds like you don't like writers, so why don't anyway. There's all that. I understand it is a very fraught business. It is a very difficult business. We all deal with a lot of rejection and a lot of even when you get stuff in print, that's when people really start shitting on you with reviews and all of that stuff. So you got to have a very, very thick skin if you're going to do this. And I'm going to tell you something that every now and then people ask me for advice. I don't know why, but they do. And I'll tell the same thing that I always tell them. And you tell me if you think I'm full of shit or not. But the thing that I always tell them is, for me, the most important thing is know what it is you want, what you will be satisfied with. If you will only be satisfied with getting a New York agent and getting a big four deal, and you're willing to do whatever it takes and however long it takes to get that, bang on. If all you want to do is get your stuff in print, up to and including maybe eventually going the indie route and self-publishing, that's fine too. But know what you want, so that you can feel some level of contentment in what you're doing. Am I full of shit, or is that good advice?
Oh no, it's great advice, and it just reminds me of a monologue Springsteen gives during a live rendition of, I believe it's Growing Up, and he's talking about how his mother wanted to be an author. Mom wanted me to be an author. and you should get a little something for yourself. And my father wanted me a lawyer. It's like, what they didn't understand was that I wanted everything, you know? So tonight, you're just gonna have to settle for rock and roll. And when I'm thinking, I hear you asking that question, I'm thinking, yeah, I know what I want. I want everything. I want everything. I want the big four. I want critical acclaim. I want movie deals. What I want is so big and large and grand and out of reach that I've destined and doomed myself to a lifetime of feeling unfulfilled. And and that's just, I mean, there's points for self-awareness, I guess, and it's also you can knock me a few for being unrealistic. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, you have to decide what you're going to be happy with. And I think, you know, just to take a step further, are you the kind of person who's capable of being happy? And in my case, the answer is resoundingly no. I've known that for a long time. I mean, I'm just not, you know, happiness is, I gave up on the idea of happiness a while ago. It's not kind of a governing precept. I'm, you know, I make art, I write, the things I do, but happiness isn't, you know, it doesn't really enter the equation.
Well, let me ask you about that. Dovetails a little bit into something I was going to ask you, because a lot of, you know, so many of the characters that you write are down and out, or they're dissatisfied with what's going on in their life, and yet, you know, they keep getting up off the mat and doing whatever. You know, they might be forced to by circumstances, but you know, they get up off the mat and they keep going on. But there is a level. I mean, nobody gets that happy ending, right? Jay Porter is not getting happy endings, and I don't mean that in the context. Somebody probably just heard that, but how much? Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, how much of that is a driver for you? Does your own personal level of dissatisfaction with those things keep driving the art? Is that what it is?
I mean, the quick answer is yes, and you know, and you know, deeper answers you can. I mean, there's some people, and there's a large subset of people who should never read my books, and then this is probably, you know, again, my agent would probably not like to hear me say that, but I mean, my books are definitely not for a large chunk of people. You know, the people who wake up every day and they're going like, "Oh God, here's another day, that's a gift. Look at the sun shining and the birds are chirping, and wow, I'm so lucky to be here and happy to be alive." Like, I don't write for you. I don't write for you. I just don't. Like, I have nothing in common with you. I don't want to get cornered in a kitchen and have to talk to you at a party. I don't want to see you at a store. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to sit on a porch and, you know, determine what kind of bird is flying out there. Like, that's not who I'm writing for. I mean, when I read Catcher in the Rye for the first time, I was 19 years old, sitting outside Sid Barrett's house in Cambridge. And I read that book cover to cover. And it was one of those pivotal moments in my life, one of those, you know, shaping moments that determined who I was and where I was going to be. I was sitting outside of a man who I idolized, who I hunted down. Sid Barrett, you know, his music was everything to me when I was that age. And I'd never read Catcher in the Rye, and I read that book, and I understand how cliched all of that sounds, but I really don't give a fuck. Like, that's what turned me into me, you know. And I read Catcher in the Rye at least once a year. I thought Holden Caulfield was right when I was 16. I thought he was right when I was 19. I thought he was right when I was 26. I read it last year. I thought he was right. I'm 52 years old. I still think Holden Caulfield's right. I named my kid Holden. And then there are people who be like, I don't like Holden. He's whiny. He's a whiny character. And, you know, the people who think Holden Caulfield's a whiny character, then go fuck themselves. Like, I don't want to hang around them. I don't want to talk to him. If you read Catcher in the Rye and you don't agree with Holden Caulfield or understand where he's coming from, I can't talk to you. I mean, we can talk. We can, you know, we can go to dinner or whatever. We can you know, share a roll or I don't know the fuck people do at dinner. You know, besides eat. But yeah, I mean, it's an attitude, it's a mindset. You know, it's and go back to Pink Floyd. It's you know, the same thing you see in The Wall, or there's ways people look at the world. There's ways people see the world. And I'm thrilled that there are some people out there that are just tickled pink by the whole delighted process of being alive. They wake up and it's like they're just thrilled. They're happy, whatever. They're just thrilled to be here. I've never been like that. I've never found an inherent joy in life. Joy is life is just it is what it is. It is neither good nor bad. You know, it's what you make of it. And the things I see constructed around me, the way the world is been put into place, and nobody consulted me about this. They sort of just did it on their own. The world I see, and I now have to navigate my way through this. I'm not sure my response is indicative of the everyman in the way that you know the product description on the box would probably have you believe, you know, like open box, live life, be happy, go forth, be merry. I just don't see a world like that. I see.
Is then the act of writing and the characters that you write, is that cathartic in any way? Is it intended to be cathartic in any way?
I don't think it's meant to be cathartic, because then you're getting like that's my own personal therapy, and I got, you know, therapists for that, and I got psychiatrists for that, and I've got medications for that. I write to describe a world I see as true as I see it. You know, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not full of shit. That's I really believe that. I'm guilty of a lot of petty, bad, unfortunate human characteristics, but I'm not full of shit, you know, and that's something I do pride myself on. And I'm surrounded in a world where I find a lot of duplicity. I find a lot of people who are sanctimonious, a lot of people in various communities in which I am part of. I just don't believe they're authentic. And being inauthentic is perhaps the greatest sin in my book, at least, you know, 12:29 on a Monday, you know, like being true to who you are and being true to yourself and being the real deal. You know, those are the things I champion, and those are the things I would, you know, defend to the death.
You know what? So I'm a reporter. That's my trade. I've been a reporter for a very long time. I'm, I guess, now more of an editor than a reporter, and we cover politics. I'm the editor-in-chief at a publication that covers the California State Capitol, and so I am asked to speak to young people, and then we always have interns. And very first thing I always say to young people is I ask them to just tell me, what business is it you think we're in? And I get all that truth in the American way bullshit. And I say, okay, that's fine. That's not wrong, but it's not the right answer. The right answer is we're in the relationship business. Every single thing you do is about relationships you build, with sources, but also with your audience, with your colleagues, with me, and that with each other, with yourself. And that requires, to me, one thing above all else: get over yourself. Today, it's cool to see your byline in a publication. It's cool to see your stuff picked up by wires or wherever, all that stuff. That's all great. But I am around people all the time who have started believing that having that byline makes them special, and it makes me insane. I tell people the work's important, the job's important, the stuff we cover is important. You're not important. I'm not important. Someone was doing this before we got here. Someone will be doing it when we're done. Okay. That's the first thing. If you're going to work for me, you have to get over yourself, right? And so that's my version of, I think, of what you're talking about, because I feel the same way. I always tell my wife, my highest compliment to anybody in the world is that they're normal. I don't care about your affectations. I don't care where you work. I don't care. I don't give any two shits about any of that stuff, right? I've worked in places like DC and stuff. You want to name drop? I can name drop. What does it matter? Who cares, right? Nobody cares about that stuff. I do find that all to be very fake and very, like, I hate journalism awards. I hate awards. I hate them, right? I hate them because I see what they do to people, and people get they write stories just to try to win awards, and then they go around patting each other on the back about the award they gave. An organization here in town just gave a bunch of prestigious awards, one of which was to the person who's in charge of the organization. You tell me, is that some horseshit or what? I mean,
Yeah.
no, sorry, that's my rant. I just went, but I'm
No,
with you. I'm with you, man. Let's form a pact here. God damn it! If you're gonna be completely phony, stay out of my sphere. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah, no, and that's the Holden Caulfield, that goddamn phonies. No, I just, and maybe it's getting older too, and having less patience for, I don't know, just the whole pomp and circumstance of that. It just gets weary. And you want to find, the one good conversation, the one honest moment. Because time's running out, and you have less time to waste. You have less time to piss away on just small talk or the weather or whatever the fuck it is. People, I mean, I don't know is that Bob Dylan line. I don't know how it all got started. I don't know what they're doing with their lives.
Right.
I do it all the time. Like you hear people talk like I have no idea. I have no idea how you got where you are, or how you got where you are. And your circle kind of gets smaller as you get older. You have less patience for just that comedy of manners. But then again, I've always hated comedies of man. I mean, I hate Jane Austen. I hate Jane Austen more than I hate any other writer to ever live. And it's mostly because it's all those goddamn manners, just the airs and the whatever the fuck they do in that goddamn book. I hate Pride and Prejudice more than I hate anything. I really fucking hate that book. I can't stand it. I just hate it. It's those that there. You could take all that. Those are people in that book. I want nothing. I take that entire cast of characters and put them as far away from me as humanly possible. They are antithetical to everything I stand for. Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth and all that. I hate that fucking book more than I hate anything. So if I put polar opposite, I put over here Pride and Prejudice, over here Catcher in the Rye. I mean, they're just completely to me. Yeah.
Well, I think it was your last book, The Shadow People, came out in 2021, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So right in the heart of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, of course, that book, deals with conspiracy theories and horror, and there's a lot of stuff going on in that book. But I want to ask about the conspiracy thing, because of course, COVID didn't start all these crazy conspiracy theories that we are dealing with on a constant basis in this country right now, but it certainly added to that. How did that help the book at all? Or, what?
Oh my God, that book fucking flopped so bad. No, COVID didn't help with, you couldn't do any releases. We had all these things, my friend Tom Pitts had this thing signed up. We were going to do this reading at the library. It was going to be this great, everything, the whole world got shut down for years. So having a book come out during COVID was terrible. And no, nothing helped that book, and it's a shame. You love all your books, and that one just slipped through the cracks. It was funny when that book got announced. We got Sam Raimi's film people contacted us, and they were like they wanted to see it, and there's all this good stuff was happening, and then COVID hit, and then it's just like, man, I don't even think I earned out my advance. It was bad. Which is, not to say the book's bad, just timing's everything. That was some pretty poor timing for that one. Conspiracies, I think people glom onto conspiracies mostly because they take comfort in believing that something, even if it's a nefarious, malevolent, evil organization, is in charge. That brings them comfort because it's less unsettling than the truth, which is that there is fucking nobody in charge. It's just completely random. And and this idea, we want to believe in God. I choose to believe in God because for the same reason, right? Because there's a point to this, there's a mean to this. What's the alternative? The alternative is there is no point. That this is just a spinning blue rock, right, in the middle of this vast, galaxy of nothingness, and there is no rhyme or reason, and we can have a mass shooting a day, and you can have kids getting cancer, and you can have horrible things happening, and there's no reason for it. If we say, oh, well, there's a reason for it, then we go, oh, well, there's a reason for it. We don't know what the reason is, but there's a reason for it. And that brings us comfort, right? But the other option is there's just fucking no order. There's nothing. All this suffering, you believe is for a purpose, or there's some greater answer being solved. What if it's not true? Then we're just here now with this,
right?
And bad guys, everybody doesn't, you don't always get what you do. The people wicked don't get worse than they deserve. They don't get enough, or they get too much, or they get better.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask you, every writer I talk to has one writer told me has had 30 some odd manuscripts written before they had any success at all. And I've heard so many different stories, and I have a point to this one too. But let me just ask you: do you have a box or a drawer full of manuscripts that you wrote, that you finished, that just never went anywhere?
I only have one. I only have one of those. I have one of those. It was the first book I wrote was called Wake the Undertaker. The original title was The Lone Palm. Wake the Undertaker was going to be the third in the series, and I was so convinced it was going to be a hit that I had written a trilogy. And the second book, called The Payback, which I wrote 100,000 words toward completion. That's the only one that sits there that will never see the light of day. It's an absolute mess, and I wouldn't even attempt to go back and look at it.
Well, the addendum to that question is, do you have stories, whether they're novels, short stories, what have you, but stories that you just cannot let go of, that maybe you should have, for whatever reason, whether you start to dead end in your brain or it just fizzles out somewhere, but there's something about it that you cannot let go of?
There is one, and it's one arc, and as a baseball fan, you'll appreciate this. Brian Taylor, who was the Yankees' #1 draft choice, I think it was 1991. And guy threw 98 miles an hour, left-hander, destined for superstardom, gets in a fight in the offseason, tears the rotator cuff, flames out, throws the ball 89 miles an hour, ends up, I think he just got served the prison time, got a little while.
Yeah.
That arc of having one skill, one talent you're better at, the one gift the universe has bestowed upon you, and then losing that skill and having to live, is a story I've tried to tell 2 different times. I tried to tell it in 2 books, both of which flopped. Wake the Undertaker, and essentially Occam's Razor is the same arc. Again, I get even closer to this one. He's a football player who blows his shoulder, and can't, or blows his knee out and can't play. I can't remember what the injury is, but both times I tried to tell that story, neither time it's worked, and I can't say I won't try it again, because it's it fascinates me that the one thing you were put on earth to do, and then you lose that skill. What do you do? But so far in 2 books, it's only been interesting to me. So we'll see if third time's a charm, or if I learn my lesson. You never know what books. My 2 favorite Porter books are the 2 that sold the worst. December Boys and Broken Ground. Broken Ground, people ask me my favorite in the Porter series. Broken Ground is hands down my favorite book in that whole series, and it is without a doubt the most widely panned, critically.
Really?
Yeah. So who knows? There's something to be said, right? Death the Artist and Barthas, and and you're getting into these, Derrida and deconstructionism and all this fun grad school stuff. But once you create something as an artist, it's out of your hands. It's not yours anymore. Now it's out in the world, and they decide what, where it goes, and you kind of lose. There is something sort of beautiful in that, and that you lose, as the architect, you lose ownership. I mean, you look at George Lucas, right, in Star Wars, created one of the greatest things ever, and then I don't think George Lucas ever quite understood what he created, or why it was so great. And he could never, what he thought made it great wasn't what made it great, and that's kind of, and you watch, and he came out and he did the prequels and all this stuff, and he said, "Oh, it's always Star Wars is for the kids." But that's not really what he created. So that to me is fascinating. That even the artist doesn't know he's fascinating, because now you have, like this third entity has entered the conversation. It's not the audience. It's not the creator. It's the thing that's been put out into the universe. And who does it belong to? Does it belong to the author? Does it belong? I mean, Walt Whitman was rewriting Leaves of Grass until the day he died. So I don't have any problem with Lucas going back and like making changes. I just think some of the changes he made were stupid, but I think he has the right to do that. But art is a living thing, is what I'm getting at. Art is a living, breathing thing that's going. It's why when we write about art, we don't write about it in the past tense, right? We write about it in the present tense, as though it's an ongoing, living entity. And
especially when it goes into somebody else's hands, as you know. And I wanted to ask you about it because you mentioned, Sam Raimi came sniffing around, one of the books. Have you had other books optioned?
Yeah, we had. We do have a show. Richard Brewer and Gary Phillips were kind enough to include me in a collection of interconnected stories called Culprits, and that was picked up by Character 7 and Jay Blakeson, and that's in development. That's coming out Disney Plus. And so one of my stories made it in there, and I had to show how that process works. Story I wrote, all this was set in Texas, right? And I had a border story, and I had this Mexican American, and it was during the wall and Trump and all that. And I really, allegiances, and they bought the story, and now it takes place in England.
Oh.
But you get paid, you get paid, and at that point, Jay Blakeson's a genius. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. He just did that Rosamund Pike. I care a lot. I mean, he's it's out of my hands that you get paid, and now somebody else takes it and they run with it. And so, but it's funny, you look and you see created by, and it says created by Jake Blakeson. I'm like, well, wait a second. Last I checked, like,
yeah,
it was me and 8 other authors, and certainly the biggest part is Richard Brewer and Gary Phillips were the ones who created it. But apparently you'll see our names in there somewhere, probably between the Best Boy and Key Grip or something. And
based on the stories of, and there'll be a little list that you can barely.
Maybe be that.
Well, it's one of those things. I've really got. I love backstory, and I really got into to history my whole life. I've always loved history, and not necessarily just the names, dates, whatever. I like to know the hows and whys, like how did something develop and turn into World War I, or how did it turn into Johnny Be Good or something, right? So I'm fascinated by that, and I think the average music person who appreciates music maybe really would never have an appreciation for how slimy the business side of it has always been, and how like Alan Freed got his name on as a songwriter to hundreds of songs that he didn't write a word of any songs, but that was a condition for radio play or whatever. I mean, there was just all this back and forth, slimy stuff that would go on all the time, and there was mob connectivity. There's all kinds of stuff going on and all that, and that's always been my impression too. That's why I like to ask writers if they've had work option. How did it go? Because an executive producer credit or even an associate producer credit can earn you a lot of money, right? That could be
a big deal,
right? I mean, and I'd like to say I was different, but like, I mean, if I could put my name on something and get some money, I'd throw my fucking name as an associate producer for something I didn't do. I mean, you know, hypocrisy can be stretched pretty far. You know, Jack Aronoff, you know, gets co-writing every Taylor Swift song, and I know damn well she does most of the writing. So
oh
who
yeah.
the hell knows how this stuff goes? But you know, money is, you know, money. You know, all these things you know, we're talking about Holden Caulfield and teen, you know, it goes back to teen angst and teen angst being born. You know, my son's, you know, getting up there now and up there, you know, being the teenager, and he's starting to realize now that you know, the things I've told him, you know, are lies. You can be anything you want to be. It's what's on the inside that counts. Money doesn't buy happiness. And we say these things, and they're nice things to say, but they're fucking lies, right? It's what's on the inside doesn't it? People fucking judge you by how you look. I'm sorry, they do. Should we not? Should we not? It'd be great if we didn't, but we do. And telling people money doesn't buy happiness, fuck you, it doesn't buy happiness. I've been poor and I've had money. It's a fuck lot better having money. So all these things we say, like what you kind of have to say, you know, it's almost like you go to dinner, right? Like, I'll get the bill. You know, this, you know, again, back to the manners thing. It drives me fucking nuts. I'd rather just be like, say what's, you know, say it like it is, you know, straight shooting on whatever. But I forget what the question even fucking was. TNA probably just the lies and just the lies that we feed each other in this perpetuating cycle of mistruths drives me nuts. Yeah, so money does buy happiness.
Well, look, I'm with you on that thing. I grew up extraordinarily poor, like government cheese poor is how I describe it, and for well into my adulthood before I wasn't. And you know, now at this stage of life, you know, we're quite okay, and this is much better.
Yeah, I mean, not that you still have a bad day. I mean, you know, having money doesn't fix everything, but
no, but you know,
buys a better brand of misery. Who said that? I forget who said that. Somebody.
I know somebody brilliant, because it's really true. I mean, the things that you know, I'm able to take for granted in this day and age would have been almost catastrophic when I was, you know, a younger person. And so, yeah, this is better. I'm not, you know, you have to have some level of gratitude, I think. Sometimes it's just for yourself. It's like, okay, well, you know, I pulled myself out of this morass. And I know you've been very open about your history, you know, and your struggles with addiction and homelessness and all of those things. And clearly you've written about a lot, that you've worked a lot of that into your stories. Again, never tried to hide any of that stuff. And now you seem to have found at least a level of comfort in life that a lot of people who are in that situation don't achieve. I mean, we know how the ends usually come out for folks in that situation.
Yeah.
You know, would things be any different if you hadn't gone through that? I mean, if you would just access this artistic side of your life when you were 17 and just rolled forth without ever having to go through all that frickin' misery.
You know, it's funny, you know, a couple of years ago, my old high school, they had me come back before the pandemic, and they wanted me to speak to the senior class and you know, about junkie love, you know, and basically it's, you know, you just say, you know, no variation, you just say no, you know, they do every year. But I'm standing up there and I got all these kids who were 16 and 17 years old or 18 years old, and they're looking at me and like, I mean, they're not fucking morons. I mean, I'm standing up there like they just flew me in to read from a book. So here I'm going like, okay, here's the story about how I did drugs, but you shouldn't do them, or or do them, but stop in time. You still look okay. You can get out and write about it, and get flown back and paid to speak about it. Because, like, I mean, they can see through that you know, the hypocrisy of that ruse, right? So I don't know. I mean, I was always somebody who had to learn things the hard way, and you know, it's a thing in AA, which I didn't do AA, and you know, people who've done it and it's worked for them, good for them. You know, I have my own issues with the whole organization and some of the people, but you know, there's this thing about, you know, being constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourself. I could never buy into buy into a program I didn't buy into. You know, I could never sign up to be subservient, I guess, which made me a hard case, a hard head. And I had to do things the way I had to do things. So I don't think I'd be where I am now if I didn't go through, you know, the route, you know, take the route I did. I could have made it a lot easier on myself if I just would have listened to my mom. But I was somebody who was obstinate. You know, I continue to have my only real skill in this life is I can bang my head against a wall longer than you can. And that's my talent. It's not artistic. It's not, that's it. And it really goes, it's that Rocky ethos, right? You know, when Rocky, right before he fights Apollo, and he says, you know, Adrian's like, I can't beat the guy. I can't beat him. He's too good. But the one thing I can do is I can stay on my feet. And there's something deeply heroic, deeply American, and not like the zealotry America, just the American ethos that really, the part that I actually like, you know, where that this speaks to, you know, taking a beating and not going down. And that's sort of, you know, our ethos.
That's like, we ought to put Joe Bugner on a $20 bill, or Chuck Wepner, or somebody like that. Some guy who just would never go to his knees no matter what, right?
Yeah, no, and there is something heroic about that, because it says, you know, you don't have to be, and that's the one thing they can't take away from you, right? They can't, like, maybe you're not good at, maybe you're not good looking, maybe you're not terribly smart, maybe, like, but the one thing you can do is stand on your feet and take a beating, and everyone can sort of, you know, that's the appeal of that story, and that's why Sylvester Stallone got paid what he got paid, and although he's still mad at Erwin Winkler for stealing his character, but I would like to have seen him in Creed 3, but he wasn't. It was still an okay movie.
Right. And then for anybody out there who does not know who Joe Bugner or Chuck Wepner was, look it up. That's all. I can Google it. I'm not going to explain it to you, but you'll get what we're talking about. So I'm going to try a different version of my closing question. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I almost left out one thing I do want to ask you quickly. What's the feeling you get when you hit the end on a manuscript? Is it relief? Is it worry? You know, what is it, anger? I mean, what is it when you type the end?
You know, there's Stephen King wrote a story talking about how, well, Misery, I think he does it too. But when he finishes a novel, you know, that's the one time he allows himself to have a cigarette. I smoke cigars now, like our friend Terrence. But there's that moment when you're done with the story where you can really just sit and enjoy, you know, your cigar and sit in perfect peace for about, you know, 15, 20 minutes. And everything is all right with the world. It's okay. And when you hit that moment, it might be the only moment of real peace I ever know. And then it's on to the next thing. But you do get those few minutes when you hit an end and you stick the landing, and you know you got it, and got it for you, you know, because chances are it's probably not going to go anywhere. I mean, there's very few Stephen Kings, there's very few Dennis Lehanes, there's very few of them. They don't. Gillian Flynn, you know, they don't, you know, you can name authors who make their living on their writing, you know, and maybe more than one hand, but not many more than one hand.
Yeah, well, especially not anymore. I mean, I think we all know, again, as the business has been winnowed down, and you know, the publisher always gobbled up all the small ones, and you know, but on and on and on. You know, I think you know, I don't have to beat that horse to death.
Peace. There's a moment when I finished it. There's a peace and calm, and everything is all right with the world and me for those, you know, brief few seconds. And it makes it all worthwhile.
Well, let me then, I'm going to throw, like I said, my closing question is always meant to be fun, but I'm going to give you a slight twist on that question. Okay. And I always ask people, let's just say I had the power to put you together with one of the following three people, and, you know, for whatever you want, dinner, drinks, whatever it is works for you, which one would you choose and why? I'm going to alter it just slightly for you. You're going to be my guinea pig here. Let's say you were going to get hired to be the ghostwriter for one of these three people.
All right.
But you could work with any one of the three. Who would you choose and why? The people I'm going to give you, the options I'll give you are Andy Warhol, River Phoenix, or John Belushi. You could pick one of those three people to work with, collaborate with as a ghostwriter. Who would you choose?
I'd probably go with John Belushi just for the drugs. I'm assuming that, if we're going anything fantastical here, just for the fucking drugs. That guy was funny. I guess River Phoenix had drugs too, but he wasn't quite as funny. John Belushi's a fucking funny guy.
He was a genius.
Yeah.
He's an absolute genius. He was that was a bummer that he.
And I find that I just found this out. The woman who Gordon Lightfoot sings, Sunday, that's the one. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Kathy Smith. Yeah. That is. I learned that almost accidentally. Maybe, right after Belushi died. I saw something about it, and my sister. I wasn't a Gordon Lightfoot person. I was younger, but my sister really liked Gordon Lightfoot. And somehow, when I saw that, I couldn't. It only stuck in my head because I couldn't wait to go tell my sister. Did you know that woman that killed Belushi? She used to be with.
That's just they do that all the time. It drives me fucking nuts. They have to charge somebody. So the poor woman, he probably begged her to get the drugs. Hey, can you give me some drugs? Sure, I can give you some drugs. Not like and now she has to go to jail for many years.
Yeah. Somebody's always got to be to blame, even when just somebody's being a dumbass. Someone's got to be to blame. That's how the world works, right?
That's how the world works.
That's how the world works. So sooner or later, they're going to blame you and me, and that's because they're going to say,
I hope I'm not going to get drugs from anybody. I'm pretty sure I'm done doing that, but who knows? I don't want to say never. Who knows? May make a return.
Never's a long time.
Yeah, numbers. Yeah.
Well, Joe, hey, thanks a lot for coming on the show again. I love having you on. It's always a great conversation. I hope folks out there enjoyed it, and I hope if you're smart, you'll go find some of Joe's books, because the man very talented, and he can actually really write great crime fiction, great. We didn't even talk about maybe the horror aspects of some of the writing. Maybe that'll be something we touch on in the future. But man, if you're looking for compelling stuff, Joe's your guy. So go check it out. I'd say thanks again for coming on the show. Thing I will leave everybody with, a couple things, as always. Please, if you haven't done so, hit subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or on one of the podcast platforms, and then leave a review. That really does help other people find the show, and that is a benefit to my guests, and that's what I really hope, so that people have an opportunity to get some insight into this insane, crazy hobby / business / obsession that people that write words for a living do. That would be great. The last thing I'll leave you with is the same thing. I'm going to leave you with two things. One, as you might notice, I'm an A's fan, and John Fisher does truly suck. That is the only time I'm ever going to say that on this platform. Sell the team. And then the other thing I'll leave you with is tomorrow's not promised to any of us. So please make today count. For my guest, Joe Clifford, and me, Rich Eisen, the host of the Open Mic, please tune in next time. We'll see you then.